Golden.
Okay, Danny, I got your email. Thank you. And then Michael, as far as your presentation goes, I will, when I'm done screen sharing your and reading your, hey, Michael, thanks for joining us. I was just speaking to you. I don't know if you heard me or not.
Yeah, I can hear you. I got my headphones in.
Okay, cool. Just talking to myself over here. When I'm done reading your intro, I'll make you the host and then just screen share. And as soon as you're done with your presentation, if you could just click on the upper right portion of the blank screen that says Underground Scholars, and there's like a little 3 dots that comes up, and when you're the host, you'll have the option to make that the host. So when you're done talking, just go to the blank screen, like the blank Zoom screen that says Underground Scholars, click those little 3 dots and make that the host, please. Because that's where I'm screen sharing from. Cool. Okay, thank you. If anyone would like to use the restroom or take any kind of break, please do so. And
I do want to use restroom, but I'm sorry. I do want to use restroom, but I'm gonna use restroom. But I have a question now. So now that I shared that with you, what's gonna be my role? Like from now until it's my time to present. Are you reading my whole bio?
No, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have enough time for to read both of your bios in their entirety. It would last the entire event. No, I'm just razzing you guys. I will read a short bio for both of you, which don't worry, I didn't put anything mean in there. I just took,
No.
I took a couple.
Are you doing the bio?
And then you go on. Yeah.
Yep. When I finish your bio, I will be like, please take to the chat and welcome Danny Murillo.
And I just unmute myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you unmute yourself, and then I'll go from sharing your image, like your like intro screen that I made for you. I'll switch to sharing your slide deck, and then like it lights on you.
Cool. All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
And then at 5, would you undo the since you're the host, would you undo the waiting room and just let everyone just come in?
Yeah. Yes, and if anyone wants to take a restroom break or anything like that, it's the time right now.
Can we test that host thing real quick?
Yeah, I'll pass it to you right now, and then if you can pass it back to the Underground Scholar. All right, you got it.
And then, so when I'm done, then, okay.
Cool.
All right, cool. All right, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Damn, I gotta figure out what's wrong with my stupid printer, huh?
Man, let me find out you got a 1988 printer, homie. Let me find out that thing's one of those big old ones like that's right next to your desk, dog.
I mean, it ain't hella big, but it's a good size. It's enough to print all these damn readings.
Yeah, that's right, homie. That's what's up. I'm excited for this one. This is gonna be solid, homie.
What about that honorarium?
Don't even trip. I got you guys. How much you guys want?
We're good, homie. I love you, homie.
You know I'll go hit a lick right quick and get that to you, homie. Nah, just kidding. Never that.
And then Ryan at the end, it says it on the run of show, but at the end, could you put the, like all you have to do is copy and paste. It says click here for the links to today's research, SB 416, and how to contact your state senator. So if you could share that into the chat, that would be cool. So that people can like have that, and hopefully they'll.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll grab that and I'll have that ready to go.
Okay. And it says recording. So I don't know if it's recording on your.
Yeah, it's record. Yeah, I put it on before I hand it over to the host, but I'll erase all that. So.
Oh no, you're good.
And are you the one that's introducing us?
Yes, I am.
Cool. All right.
And let me see right now. Okay, we got a few people in the waiting room. Hold on just a second. Let me edit this last thing on the slide.
Also, did I pronounce your name right? Alexandria?
Yeah, Alexandria.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And then Michael, soft J on your last name, Cerda Jara.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
How much time do we each have to present?
Like I'd say like 15 minutes max. Like don't worry about making it like
that includes Q&A?
No, you're if you want to check out the run of show, that kind of shows how like we're doing everything, but for the Q&A, that'll happen after your presentation, and Danny's is going to go first. And I'm about to share my screen and then start the event just so everyone knows.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
We got this. We don't need luck. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. We'll be starting just shortly. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting going with our speakers in just a moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. We'll be getting started in just a moment. We're waiting on a handful more people to arrive, and then we'll get going. All right, everyone, I think we're going to get started. Today, we will be going over some of the history of the Underground Scholars. We have one of our Underground Scholars, Santa Barbara members, will be walking us through some of how Underground Scholars got started. Then we have two very exciting guest speakers who are here to present on their research. After that, once we hear from both of them, we'll be hosting a Q&A. And after the Q&A, you will have a chance to ask some questions of our researchers and kind of get their ear if you have any questions that came up during their presentations. So beyond that, we do have a little call to action at the end. So please stick around because we have a way for you to impact change and kind of put some action behind what you'll be learning today. And my name is Alexandria. I'm a member of the Underground Scholars at UC Santa Barbara. So if you would like to introduce yourself, please take to the chat and share your name, your pronouns, and where you're joining us from. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm joining from Dixon, California. It's in Northern California, like right in between the Bay Area and Sacramento, like right in the middle of the farmland. Okay, great. We've got some San Diego and likely a lot of people from the Santa Barbara area. So I am going to pass it over to Luis, and he will share a little bit about the history of Underground Scholars. Take it away, Luis.
Hi, everybody. My name is Luis Munoz. I'm a member of the Underground Scholars, UC Santa Barbara, communication major. And I'm going to be talking about the history and giving you guys an introduction here. So basically, the Underground Scholars creates a pathway for formerly incarcerated and system impacted individuals into higher education. We are building a prison to school pipeline through recruitment, retention, and advocacy. Our continued success directly challenges the stigmas associated with our population. U.S. challenges societal norms concerning incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people, specifically students impacted by issues of mass incarceration, imprisonment, and detainment of any kind. The goal of Underground Scholars is to bridge the popular academic theoretical discourse of mass incarceration with one that is grounded in the lived experience of UCSB, students and people from surrounding communities. And the people from surrounding communities, we aim to shift the school to prison pipeline to a prison to school pipeline using higher education as an alternative to incarceration. We provide students with a variety of academic and co-curricular support that are essential to achieving their academic, professional, and personal goals. Committed to current and prospective formerly and directly impacted students, UCI programs fall into three broad strategies: recruitment, retention, and last, advocacy and policy. Berkeley Underground Scholars Initiative is a grassroots effort created by UC Berkeley students who have been directly impacted by the prison industrial complex, including those formerly incarcerated people or with incarcerated family members. Underground Scholars Initiative was started as a student organization in the spring of 2013 by formerly incarcerated and system impacted students at UC Berkeley. In 2014, USI received funding for the University of California, Berkeley through the fee referendum that students voted on. The funding made it possible for USI to rent office space at Stiles Hall, hire our first director, transfer coordinator, and 5 formerly incarcerated students to work in our office. In 2016, we partnered with Senator Lonnie Hancock, who led an effort to secure funding from the state to initiate the development of an academic support program to serve formerly incarcerated students in addition to the student organization. Berkeley Underground Scholars was born out of that effort. We are currently working to expand our program to every UC campus. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back to Alexandra.
All right, thank you so much, Luis. I appreciate that. And we are going to move on and introduce our first speaker here. We're very excited to have Danny Murillo here. Our first guest speaker co-founded the Underground Scholars Initiative at University of California, Berkeley, where he was a McNair Scholar researching the disproportionate suspension rate of Black male students. He has since authored the community-based research projects focused on incarceration's economic impact on communities of color. And most recently, he was a program analyst at the Campaign for College Opportunity, where he was the primary author of the Possibility Report, From Prison to College Degrees in California. Please take to the chat and welcome Danny Murillo.
Thank you. So first of all, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Alexandra. I also want to thank everyone involved in organizing this event, and thank you to the Underground Scholars Initiative at UC Santa Barbara for the opportunity to present the Possibility Report, From Prison to College Degrees in California. Next slide, please. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? So then, not, I don't think, there we go. There we go. Thank you. That's, yeah, that's second slide. So, yes, before I get into the research findings and recommendations of this presentation, I want to share a brief overview of what you will find inside the possibility report. The report includes descriptive demographics on California's incarcerated and parole populations, a landscape analysis of policies governing college access, and current programs offering of public colleges and universities serving incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students. Followed by what I believe to be the most critical part of this report, the voices of formerly incarcerated students describing the barriers and opportunities they encounter in California's public higher education system. Finally, the report includes a set of policy recommendations for campuses and California to dismantle post-incarceration barriers and create more opportunities for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students. The report focuses primarily on California state prisons, which represent approximately half of the total incarcerated population in the state. Disaggregated data by race, ethnicity, and gender and age is readily available via the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Limited descriptive demographic data exists for California federal prison and county jail populations, and therefore they're not included in the body of this report. So the incarcerated population in California state prison is estimated to be above 127,000 people. Black Californians make up 6% of the state population, but represent 28% of the state prison population. Latinx represent 39% of the state's population, but represent 44% of the state prison population and make up the largest population of incarcerated people in California. And the majority of people released from prison are placed in parole or probation programs. In 2018, the number of people in a post-release or court-mandated supervisory program was above 405,000 people, 405,000 people, adults, and 27,500 youth. A majority of individuals on parole from state prison and are Black and Latinx, with nearly half between the ages of 25 to 39. So according to the Office of Correctional Education, at the end of the spring 2020 semester, more than 11,400 incarcerated students in CDCR were enrolled in a face-to-face or correspondence program, and above 1,200 incarcerated students had received a college degree. From July 2018 to June 2020, there were more than 8,200 people released from state prison who were enrolled in a college course while incarcerated. At the same time, nearly 600 people earned a college degree before their release date. Although California's public colleges and universities do not collect data on the number of formerly incarcerated students they serve, it is estimated that in 2019, over 1,000 formerly incarcerated students were enrolled in all three segments of California's public higher education system. Last summer, the Campaign for College Opportunity hosted 3 virtual focus groups with 29 students representing a cross-section of California's community college, Cal State universities, and the UC campuses. The focus group participants were diverse in terms of gender, race, and ethnicity, and they had an array of experiences accessing and succeeding in higher education. The focus group included individuals who were enrolled in a college program while incarcerated and continued their education upon release, as well as participants who were enrolled only after the release from jail or prison. Their academic interests varied from certificate degrees, associates in arts and science, associate degree for transfer, bachelor's, master's, PhDs, and law degrees. Although the focus group participants had a diverse set of life experiences, 5 common themes emerged from all 3 focus groups, and they included 1, parole and probation, 2, housing, 3, employment, 4, targeted support, and 5, career transition. Next slide, please. The parole and probation systems in California do not prioritize higher education and often present barriers that keep formerly incarcerated students from achieving their educational goals. There is no centralized policy guidance on managing and supporting formerly incarcerated students on parole probation. For the most part, participants in the focus groups described probation and parole officers as unsupportive of their educational aspirations and goals. Next slide, please. Requirements to access housing or parole requirements leave students with unstable living situations, creating an environment unconducive to going to college or staying in college. Many students shared that transitional housing conditions require that an individual is not a full-time student or they cannot apply for affordable housing because they had an ankle monitor and or felony convictions. Many of our focus group participants shared that had they had lived in vehicles during their educational journeys and were often homeless. Next slide, please. Formerly incarcerated students straddle two employment problems: finding work with a conviction history and balancing the need to work while attending school. The need to work poses severe issues for formerly incarcerated students. Employment is key to maintaining stable housing, meeting basic needs, caring for family, and more than likely, it is a condition for probation, parole, or housing. The students we spoke with elevated the difficulties with being a parent, finding stable work, and finding enough work to meet financial obligations. Next slide, please. Support services are crucial to college retention, but are inconsistent across campuses, and in some instances, the responsibility to create a space for formerly incarcerated students falls on the students themselves. There are so many steps a student must take before they even set foot on campus. That is why our focus group participants suggest that higher education support begins before release. While incarcerated, students urge that support take the form of advising and help with transcripts, registration, financial aid, housing, mental health services, legal support. Excuse me. As an example of the type of support students need while incarcerated, several male students referenced their lack of knowledge about the selective service registration condition for financial aid, requiring men between ages of 18 to 25 to sign up for selective service. Next slide, please. Campus advisors lack the knowledge and understanding to properly advise students while with criminal records or career opportunities. Due to their arrest and conviction history, formerly incarcerated students need expert and often legal guidance as they map out their career aspirations. Even after receiving their degree, formerly incarcerated students are not guaranteed employment. And Michael will be touching on that with his research next, especially if their chosen career requires a licensure, certification, or clearance. There are more than 50 occupational licensing boards and bureaus in California tasked with granting licensure certifications to more than 200 professions. Existing licensing barriers impact formerly incarcerated students' choices in academic majors and career fields, and often academic and career advisors are unaware of those barriers. Next slide, please. The recommendations in the possibility report address these challenges and encourage immediate action from college, campus, and state and federal government to increase college opportunity for these students. Recommendations include ensuring better transitional services from incarceration to college enrollment, continuing investment on campus support services, and implementing hiring policies that prohibit the use of conviction against qualified applicants on campus. Also, what I included in this slide are additional recommendations that kind of touch on all three systems. You know, we don't really keep track of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students. Like there's no center where all of this information is collected. You know, establishing a statewide coordinating body for higher education to assume responsibility between all of the carceral systems and higher education systems, and continue to prioritize incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students through different funding streams, right? So these are just additional recommendations that we made. In closing, I want to thank once again the focus group participants who were willing to be open and honest about their post-incarceration journey into a public college or university. As a state, we have a real opportunity to create change for generations of Californians caught up in a carceral system, For far too long, California has overinvested in prisons to solve our social issues, but has provided minimal resources or funding to colleges and universities to offer an alternative to incarceration. It is time to change that, and I hope that this report builds on the work that so many people have contributed to make college accessible to incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insightful research, Danny. We appreciate it. And we are so appreciative of your time and that you're going to hang around and take some questions from us later. Now, we will head to our next speaker. Just a moment. All right. So our second guest speaker hopes to impact policy and contribute to the discourse on mass incarceration. While at UC Berkeley, he was a Regents and Chancellor's Scholarship recipient and a research fellow, a McNair Scholar, and a Robert and Colleen Haas Scholar. Using his own lived experience as a guide for his work, he hopes to change how people who have experienced the carceral state are negatively portrayed in society. He's currently pursuing his doctoral degree in sociology at Stanford University. Please take to the chat and join me in welcoming Michael Cerda Jara.
Thanks, everyone. Give me a second to get let me set up my slides. Also really quick, Alexandra, since I'm host now, I think I'm also given like the.
Don't worry about it, you're fine.
Well, like it's telling me people are in the waiting room, so just admit as they come, or?
It depends on how much of an audience you want, I guess.
All right.
Yes, admit them. Thank you.
All right. Give me a second.
Thanks everyone for your patience. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties with my Zoom account, so we're going old school, but I'll pass it back to Michael now.
Does everyone see my slides? All right. All right, so yeah, again, thank you everyone for joining me. My name is Michael Cerda Jara. Today I'm going to be speaking about a policy brief that I co-authored with Amina Elser, which is a fellow colleague of mine at UC Berkeley, and my faculty mentor at UC Berkeley, which is David J. Harding. So this policy brief is based on my undergrad thesis, which was titled Still Marked: Criminal Record, Education, Race, and Employment in the Era of Mass Incarceration. And so, yeah, I'll just get started. So as it's pretty much well known, especially in this audience, there are over 2 million people currently incarcerated in the US, and this ranges from state prisons all the way to other facilities, including military jails and detention centers. And out of these 2 million people, 600,000 are released each year, which that itself doesn't contribute to the amount of people with criminal records in the US, because people do acquire criminal records without being incarcerated. So that number right now is between 70 and 100 million criminal records that exist here in the United States today. And I don't think it needs to be really stated, but criminal records are regarded as negative credentials, and all of that is stigmatizing. So why is this study here important? First of all, I want to say, I'm formerly incarcerated. I have a criminal record. I'm a student. I was a student at UC Berkeley. Now I'm at Stanford. And it was really in my class at UC Berkeley, my first semester, where I really started thinking about my own positionality in the university. And I started to wonder pretty much if this is going to matter at all. Once I'm done, am I going to be able to get a job? Am I going to be able to increase my chances at, getting a job with higher pay, better working conditions, things like that? And Also, formerly incarcerated individuals are encouraged to pursue higher education, especially right now. I feel like there is a greater push for currently and formerly incarcerated individuals to pursue a higher ed. So basically, I'm wondering, is this worth it for me and for everyone else that, is impacted by, mass incarceration? And in that class that I spoke about, I was given this article to read, The Mark of a Criminal Record by Diva Pager. This is where I drew much of my inspiration for this study that I did. And she basically did an audit study where she sent out a bunch of fictitious resumes and measured the amount of callbacks. And she found that people with criminal records received half the amount of callbacks compared to those without a criminal record. But what I found was, she looked at the criminal record, but she didn't look beyond a high school education. So for me, the gap that I found in her study and other literature like this was that higher education is not examined alongside the criminal record. So I'm factoring education into the picture, and I'm looking at the formerly incarcerated in the college educated labor market. And in my project, I'm focusing particularly on jobs that require or prefer at least a bachelor's degree versus the low wage labor market where typically just a high school education is needed. And again, it's because this really hasn't been examined in the literature. So my research question was, or is, what is the impact of a criminal record on the employment prospects among men with bachelor's degrees? And I'm going to start with a little project overview. In 2018, I did sort of a pilot study, which I call part one, where I submitted 400 job applications to random employers across the San Francisco Bay Area. And I found no significant difference between resumes. So meaning I didn't find a clear difference between people that had criminal records and people that didn't have criminal records that were looking for jobs. They received pretty much the same amount of callbacks. And you can see that here. On the far left is Pager study. In the middle is a study conducted by Chris Eugen. And on the right is the particular study in 2018. So if you compare the gap between the two columns, you can see that there really is no difference in the study that I conducted compared to the other two. So the implications from part one of my audit study were that a criminal record combined with the bachelor's degree led to more callbacks. However, I was left wondering, well, what if a bachelor's degree isn't enough to secure employment for the formerly incarcerated? Like, yes, it increases callbacks, but does it actually get you the job? And also in my initial study, I did not look at things like race. I didn't look at geography, and I didn't factor in timing of record. So in 2019, I did part two, where the brief is based on. So in this part of my project, I submitted 1,798 job applications to random employers across California. I was looking at the 6 largest metro areas in California. So Oakland, LA, Sacramento, San Diego, San Bernardino, and San Jose. I was also looking at the effect of the timing of the record. So individuals who earned their BA after getting a criminal record. And I also looked at individuals that earned their BA first and then got a criminal record. And that was for that particular size. And also I interviewed formerly incarcerated men with BAs. I interviewed a total of 20 males that have bachelor's degrees and a criminal record. And then I'll go into my methodology. So I did a mixed methods approach, and this is pretty much summarizing what I just went over. An audit study of 1,798 job application callbacks. And for those that may not know, an audit study, it's basically an experimental study in which you're looking for discrimination based on, this is primarily used in jobs that look for discrimination based on, you know, a number of variables, whether that be race, gender, or in this case, a criminal record. And then I did the 20 in-depth interviews. And the purpose of the revamped audit study was to test for significance using a larger sample. So again, like 400 compared to 1,798, that's a big increase. And also I wanted to examine the impact of race, geography, and the timing of record. And here's a little more details about the audit study itself. I focused on private sector companies that require a preferred bachelor's degree. Applications were submitted online. Race was signaled by applicant first and last name, and the record type was signaled in resume plus the cover letter. And the purpose of my interviews was to explore any strategies that may or may not be employed during the job search and identify any mechanisms that may or may not be encountered during the job search. And here is my interview participant criteria. All of my participants were males over the age of 18. All were formerly incarcerated with a conviction. And I want to emphasize the with a conviction because I do want to acknowledge that there are individuals that experience incarceration, yet, you know, they come out clean without a record, whether that be for beating their case or whatnot. The bachelor's degrees was earned from an accredited university, and all my participants were recruited from the formerly incarcerated students and alumni network. So my findings from the second part of my audit study in 2019. Here we see the number of callbacks across all resumes. We can see that the no record BA has 8% callbacks, and the record pre-BA and record post-BA each have 4%. So we can see that employer callbacks are reduced by half for those with a criminal record when compared to those without one, which is holding consistent with prior research. So this time I did find a significant difference. Here is the data broken down by race. And some of the main findings that I found when breaking it down by race was that there's actually no race effect among college-educated men with records. So if we can focus on the yellow arrows, you know, among Black and Latino applicants, we can see that there's no effect of the criminal record on callbacks. And these callbacks aren't statistically different from one another. And among white applicants, the criminal record does reduce the callbacks, as the differences between the no record and record conditions are statistically significant at the 0.05 level. And also that there is a large effect of record for white men and no effect for Black and Latino men. So if we compare what's underneath the green brackets in each category to the larger bar, which is the no record one, we can see that the biggest gap is in the white category, where it goes from 10% for people with whites with no records down to 4% and 3%. And then the other categories, Black and Latino, there really is no difference. And that is holding consistent with prior literature that's stating that race plays a huge factor in number of callbacks received. So really what this is telling us is that just being especially Black reduces your callback rate, and the criminal record really doesn't do anything, like it doesn't have a more dampening effect on the number of callbacks received. It's just the fact that the applicant is perceived as, you know, is Black that is hindering employer callbacks. And the same can be said for the Latino category, but to a much lesser extent. And findings from my interviews. So my first finding, I found three main I guess, themes you can call that came out in each interview. And the first one is that my interviewees indicated that they always had this feeling that they need to overshare. The second that came out was learning to omit information. The third was, encountering barriers due to background checks. And the fourth is that they strategically begin to avoid jobs that require a background check. So my first one that I'm going to go into detail about is the oversharing. And I'm just going to lay out some quotes for everyone here. One of my participants said, "At first I was being forward, giving them arrests that weren't even convictions, stuff like that. I thought honesty was the best policy." Another one said, "I would disclose my arrest history on the application. You would see them look at that portion and they were like, oh," and there would be like a very awkward pause. And then you can just imagine how the interview would go from there. And then omission. This person said, "It took me like a month to figure out I wasn't going to find work if I keep disclosing it." And another said that I lied about my felony conviction and I ended up getting an interview. And the third theme, background check. This stage of the employment process is always unsuccessful. I was struggling to find employment because of the background check. I've been turned down 3 times after already getting the position. It's a wall, it's a barrier from you getting a job or being economically independent. If you have that scarlet letter of being formerly incarcerated, they're not going to hire you for anything. That's how I felt. I could be smarter or work harder than the person next to me, but if I'm formerly incarcerated, I'm not getting a job. I think for a lot of people, it just makes it seem like employment's not really an option. And the last theme, which is avoidance. One participant said, "I won't even apply if a background check is required." Another said the limitation was that I didn't apply because of the record. So these quotes are just, some examples of how, individuals with criminal records and a bachelor's degree, how they're feeling and what they're experiencing out in the job market. A lot of them, they were asked to compare their job seeking experience before having earned the degree and after earning their degree. And it was just really interesting to see some of the things that came out. But also it was really, I don't know if humbling is the right word, but, as they were speaking, I felt a lot of what they were saying myself. So my interview and implications are that policy initiatives benefit those with convictions in the low wage labor market and not those in the college educated labor market. And here's a little breakdown that I did, a process breakdown, I guess. So we get your application in, you enter phase 1. If you get a call back for an interview, if you're offered the job, you enter phase 2, which phase 2 is the background check. And getting the job is contingent on getting the background check. On passing the background check. But most of the time that doesn't come back cleared, so you don't end up getting the job. So I'm saying the problem area could be found within phase 2, where you're either not given the job offer because you're being upfront about your conviction history, or you're not getting the job because you're unable to pass the background check. And policy initiatives such as Ban the Box, they really only help individuals in the phase 1 part of this process, which is, getting your application in and receiving a call back for an interview. And according to the Society for Human Resource Management, 69% of organizations conduct background checks. So what can we do? We have some recommendations. These are just some of them. The first is to implement some form of anti-discrimination enforcement. The second is to ban the consideration of criminal records and hiring decisions in general, or implement automatic certificates of rehabilitation. And next steps for me and what I want to do with this project is I like to investigate differences in gender. Also, I'd like to expand to other job industries, and I would like to further examine the role of the background check. And these are just some of my acknowledgements. I won't read them through because I feel like I already went on a lot, but yeah, so I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and I'll pass it back to
Thank you so much. Wow.
I think
Michael, thank you for sharing
Sorry.
your story and your research. No need to apologize. Thank you. We appreciate your time so much. And we are going to move on to our question and answer. And so if you had any questions that came up during our presentations, please feel free to reflect on those and put them in the chat if you like. You will have the option to unmute in a little bit and place your mic on and speak to our researchers. So we'll start off our Q&A. I'm going to pass it over to Gilbert, who will be leading the Q&A.
Hello, y'all. I apologize that I'm using my phone. My laptop went out, unfortunately. But yeah, it's grateful that I'm able to have this conversation and do a Q&A with these important panelists, amazing panelists. So fortunately, I do have a relationship with this individual and Danny Murillo. So it's very a privilege to be underneath his wings, who especially guided me through here. So I want to start off with reading your report, it was really amazing. There is one thing that you did touch on, like you talk about there was a barrier about the California federal prison and the jails, but I'm wondering there was like other barriers as well, like approaching within this report.
For sure, thank you. Yeah, I think with the data, the demographics and data, is that it's not complete, right? County jails and federal prisons, they just have numbers of how many people are incarcerated, but not broken down the way the California Department of Corrections does every 2 years. They kind of have a report with this segregated data, right? So that was so easy to kind of break down. And along with the data that I got from the Office of Correctional Education, which is under CDCR. So it was allowed me to compare the students as well, right? The incarcerated students and incarcerated people. But as far as other barriers, I would say just, the whole quarantine, right? It really threw everything off, right? But I think in a good way, right? When I first started this job, I was supposed to do 3 visits, one in IE, one in LA, and one in Fresno, which are the Campaign for College Opportunities hubs, right? These are like one of the 3 main organizing hubs. And I was going to go interview students there, right? Students in the community college, Cal State, and the UCs in those regions. And then because of COVID and the quarantine, we were forced to kind of think about, do we still do these regional pockets, or do we just expand it since we're going to be able to do the trainings, right? I guess the barrier would be doing the virtual focus groups. Was that I kind of did a lot of research on before doing the focus group and really trying to understand what was the best way to kind of have an engaging conversation with folks, right? Because there might not be an opportunity to kind of catch everything, right? Especially like body language or and give people the opportunity to really kind of input in that process. But overall, it went pretty well.
Yeah, especially that intimate relationship, you get a more you could get more in that feeling. But yeah, can you slide to the next question? Thank you. And what were the approaches that you took to measure the target the student support?
That really just came from student experiences, right? All of the 5 themes came from what students kind of talked about in the focus groups, right? So probation, housing, employment, student support. So they just kind of, as I was asking them questions, that was some of the responses, were that a lot of colleges lack student support, and it was different, right? Like some students, that were from, UC campuses with programs were saying something very different than someone, in a rural region, right, where there was no support, right, and they had to do it on them, pretty much kind of figure out themselves, right? So that the target support really came from the conversations, right, and then also some of the literature that I was reading before taking on the project, right.
In the rural area as well. There's I was wondering, no, actually that was probably be the next question. You could slide into the next question. I was wondering, like, what would be your suggestions to further your research on this topic? Because I know one of your report you did talk about not formerly incarcerated, but people are currently incarcerated are taking like college courses as well. I wonder if you could dive into that.
Right. I think there's a lot of places this research can go, and also a lot of places that other people can take it. Right. We came up with 5 themes. Right. Just each theme by itself can be something that somebody can unpack. Right. Parole probation barriers, housing barriers, employment barriers. These are all themes that can be broken down individually into their own kind of research project. And even with incarcerated students, right, something that needs to be looked at is the transition process, right, from as folks are coming home from prison and jails into, back to the communities. What's that bridge, right? What's that bridge look like? Because sometimes it doesn't exist, right? And folks are just kind of like, it's a hit and miss, right? Like you might come back to a region where there's a lot of programs around, and you might get connected with community members that are involved in this work, but you might go somewhere where there's no one there, and the colleges are not providing that work. So really, thinking about a suggestion in terms of like the incarcerated students is looking at that transition, right, from incarceration, and how do they end up on a college campus, or how do we make that possible, right?
It's always strengthening the agency, the structural agency. Yeah. So yeah, man, this is very grateful having this conversation with you, Karnad. I wonder, can you move in with Michael with the Yay area?
Before we head on to Michael, we actually did have 2 questions come up in the chat. I know you're on your phone, so I can call it out for you, Gilbert. We had Flacco and a question from Rick Z. So Flacco, you typed in first if you'd like to ask your question, and then Gilbert, if you could call on Rick Z after, please.
He answered it in like the questions that were asked right there, but what was like the common theme that you recognized within the formerly incarcerated students that you interviewed and did this with? I think you broke it down a little bit, but and what are some suggestions that you have to overcome the barriers that are being experienced, like policy suggestions or something like that?
For sure, I would say like off the top is parole and probation, right? They're not being supportive. Sometimes they are just a straight barrier, right? They don't want to support folks to pursue education and want them to pursue, some job training or employment. And I think emphasizing, whether it's legislative policies or just internal policies that including higher education as part of the reentry plan, and not just employment or job training, right? Yeah, so including higher. Oh, and then also thinking about like, there's a lot of reentry money out there, right? That the state is kicking down to organizations, right? And unfortunately, there's no way for higher education institutions to get that funding. But thinking about ways how we can start having access to those funds, or working with organizations that are getting those funds, right? That are these organizations that are claiming to do this reentry work, and emphasizing that education needs to be part of that reentry conversation, right? It has to be part of the ecosystem of reentry, right? Whether it's not just mental health, housing, employment, but also including education as well.
I guess we have another question, Carlene.
Yeah, I was.
Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, it's all right. Either Danny or Michael, it doesn't matter. I was just wondering about the data. I just don't feel really good getting my data from CDCR. I mean, it's real easy to get and it looks good, but when I talk to some people that are incarcerated, because I'm doing research on San Quentin, and it doesn't actually seem to be what the guys are saying that are supposed to be this data. So, and then I got the academics that are judging me, right? It's hard to explain to them, like about the difference between state data and data that I can get through either interviews or or let's say cell phones get called from inside the prison, which is a big conflict with my academic advisor because it's some IRB thing. They want me to get some kind of permission, and then they can't do it because it's like almost, it's not legal. So how are you supposed to get data for your research if you got these requirements that don't fit us the way we could do different kind of research? They might have different outcomes. Is there like an answer to that, or should just go the straight way? Should just do the academic way and get it done and do it and massage it the best I can, or what do you think? Danny or Michael?
Yeah, I really don't know how to respond to that. Not sure if anybody else wants to take a shot.
I'll take a shot. I mean, if that's all right with you, Danny.
Yeah, for sure.
I just go with it. I mean, I roll with it. Yeah, I'm also not in the States, but I would always try to figure out a way to get the research. I think the objective is to get the research, and if there's a means in which you can get the research, get that information, and if you don't have to go through all the protocols, I would try to find that way. But I know the American system is, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of bureaucracy, but I would always look for that way, because to me, that information is so rich, that authentic information that you're talking about, talking to people directly inside. So I would shoot for that. And try to find some type of way, because the university it's not the state government necessarily. I mean, there are regulations, but I would try to figure out how to use that information. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
I see there was one more question. I think, should we move on to the next panelist, or should we just save the question for the last, Alexandra?
We'll touch on the question from Rick Z. He had his hand up. I know you were just speaking. Did you?
Oh yeah. So
like to share a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit so I was thinking underground scholars, it would also, I think would be a really good program in Mexico. A lot of people are moving behind it. But some researchers have told me, this isn't Cali, this is Jalisco, and it's not the same thing. The cartel is not the same thing. But I think people are. I mean, in Cali, there's a lot of money on the streets, and people are choosing to educate themselves. But I don't really see. I'm wondering are there also Spanish people who just speak Spanish that are in this movement trying to educate themselves that could kind of serve as examples for people in Latin America? Because we've adopted the neoliberal policies in the States, and we have had our war on drugs, and there's a lot of people incarcerated. A lot of people don't even know why they're in jail. I mean, these are really a lot of really humble people got incarcerated in the 80s and 90s, etc., for similar reasons as in the States. I mean, the same policies that were over there, we sent our presidents to the States. They got educated in Harvard, and then they had the same policies here. But what I want to get at is I mean, how could you guys kind of use this underground scholar thing and expand it to different contexts? Does it only work in California? What do you think about that, Danny?
Well, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be underground scholars, right? There are other programs across the country, or at least in the United States, that are doing similar work, right? So the possibility is there, right? There's also a professor at a Cal Poly Pomona who does work with on an international level, right, with different states that are providing, or colleges and universities that are providing education in different countries for folks that are incarcerated. That's Ryan Redford Reese, right? Dr. Redford Reese at Cal Poly Pomona runs a Prison University project where They work with different folks, they're different universities in different countries doing that work, right? I don't know what that looks like. And I haven't had that conversation with anybody of trying to do something like on an international level or expand it. I think just even what we're trying to do in California takes a lot of capacity, right? So for anybody to, I know I'm not going to take on that lead because I don't have the capacity to start doing it on an international level. But I think it really depends on the country that you're in, right? I believe some countries are already doing education in prison. I just don't know what they're doing after.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you so much for taking those questions. We have one more we're going to take from Dr. Noel Vest, if you would like to unmute yourself.
Sure, and this can be a question to either. First, I want to say, Carlin, if you figure out how to solve that riddle of collecting data for people inside prison, as someone formerly incarcerated, please share it with the group, because it's one of the hardest things that haven't really cracked yet, and I've been trying since 2014, 2015. So it's huge, and hopefully we'll start breaking down that barrier soon. I also just want to say, just incredible work by both of you on this. I know what effort goes into creating these documents, and it's just incredible that you were able to collect this data, and Danny, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So just incredible job just all the way around. I want to kind of get that out first. And, I'm kind of curious, you mentioned in there that your thought, like one policy recommendation would be to, what I'm assuming is it was the second recommendation you had, which was kind of create this, maybe like a state office or something like that, that is kind of housed within maybe the Department of Corrections, or not Department of Corrections, housed within the Department of Education, maybe in a state, to really kind of foster this. And I do think it's so important. And so I'd maybe talk about that a little bit, because I think with the restoration of Pell, you're going to see probably a lot of colleges that weren't offering classes before kind of come in and try and take advantage, I think, in these situations. And so kind of talk a little bit about that, how important that office might be, and then how to keep DOC's hands off of it, because that will be probably the most important thing, is that, I see these, it just seems like DOC always wants or I should say CDCR, I'm used to being back in Washington, but they always want to keep their hands in everything, and really making sure that it is led by people that are formerly incarcerated, and isn't kind of overshadowed by what the CDCR wants to do.
For sure. Yeah. So the idea for that came from a legislative report that I found that was published in 1978, I believe. And it had it's a lot of information. And so it turns out that everything that we're doing now was already being done in the 70s, right? And in the 60s in California. Every prison in California had a community college serving incarcerated students. And at that time, there was only 12 prisons, and I believe 11 were male and one was female, right? And then also every California Youth Authority, which I believe at that time was 3 or 4, had a community college program on the inside, doing from vocation to some type of AE degree with transfer credits, right? So that's where kind of the idea came from, right? And the report was authored by, blanking out on it, I think it was the California Committee or California Committee on Education, but follow up with me and I can send you the report, right? And the report was great because it kind of provided a map of what the state can do, right? They had education programs in prison, and we're also collaborating with programs that were already on the outside, right? And it turns out that there was already programs, Fresno City College had a program, of course, San Francisco State, so a college in Norco had a program called the Pinto Club. So there was a few colleges that were also providing support services on the outside. And so the committee, the central committee, was made up of all 3 segments of California's higher education system. The community colleges, represented from the community colleges, represented from the Cal States, and the UCs. And for me, what I would recommend is that we representatives from each of the programs, right? Rising Scholars Network, Project Rebound, Underground Scholars, but at the same time, including in that committee, people that have shown to be allies in this work, right? And so kind of creating a board that's going to oversee, education for on the inside and on the outside for formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated people.
Yeah, so important. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Danny. I'm going to pass it back to Gilbert, and we will continue on with our Q&A for our second guest speaker.
Hey. What up, Michael?
So,
So how you doing? How you doing, man? Hey, I'm happy that you went through amazing growth, both of y'all. So, so, oh yeah, he helped me out with my PIQ, just to throw it out there too. So anyways, so yeah, for the first question, I want to ask, like, wait, this is the first one or this is the last one, Alexandria? Okay, there we go. So there we go. Now we're on the right track. So what barriers do you encounter in this research, and how do you approach them?
Honestly, I think the barriers that I encountered was just actually doing the work. It was a lot. I didn't really find the issue like finding a sample. I just looked to the formerly incarcerated student and alumni network, which Danny is also he's the one who created it. So that's where I got all of my interviewees. And just doing the audit study, it's just tedious work. I didn't do it alone. Luckily, I had a team. I was able to get a team to help me out with submitting all 1,798 applications. So I think just getting through that tedious work of data collection is probably, I wouldn't say it's a barrier, but it's just tedious. The IRB and all that stuff, I had really great guidance and support, great mentorship, so I was able to get through that pretty quick. I had a lot of help with putting mine together and stuff. Also, yeah, I had a really great faculty mentor. So, I think I wouldn't say I had barriers necessarily. It's just it's time consuming, and
Yeah, because when I was reading your report, I was trying to find, like, man, well, where's the little barriers around here? Homie ain't highlighting no barriers around here. So it was pretty interesting. It went out very thorough, homie. But yeah, as for the next question, please. So do you recommend the student club to become a automatic certificate of rehabilitation?
Now, do you mean should an automatic certificate of rehabilitation be given just for being a part of a student club, or
maybe more as a program, like a student program led, like underground scholars?
If you become part of the underground scholars, you're granted a certificate of rehabilitation, something like that.
More like as an expungement.
Okay. I recommend certificates of rehabilitation as soon as you get out. You know what I mean? If it could really, be one thing, as soon as you're done with your time, that's it, boom. I would go as far as just eliminating the record completely, as soon as you're done with, your time or whatever, your probation or parole. So, that's how I feel about it. As far as being granted something like that, I did have a recommendation similar to this where I said, and this is in my honors thesis, I spoke about once individuals actually complete their degree, or they complete their vocational training or something, they should be granted a certificate of rehabilitation right away. So, sort of similar to this. The only difference is like, I was saying like once an individual is actually done with their degree or vocational training, like, they should be granted a certificate. But again, like, I honestly just feel like all of that should be eliminated as soon as you're done with whatever time you were given. So that's where I stand with that. But when you're making recommendations and stuff, you got to make them palatable to policymakers and the public and things like that. You kind of have to tell them, I guess, you want to say realistic things that they can see happening or that they can actually consider, because it'd be very hard to just go to them and say, hey, you need to just eliminate all this as soon as someone's done with their time or their probation or parole. They're not going to really be on board with that, so it's kind of hard trying to navigate, between being, on the abolition side and, trying to, just get people to hear you out.
Yeah, most definitely. We do live in a polarized society with different ideologies, especially like the police funding. There's so much, so much money within the corruption of the department, recidivism, not rehabilitation. So yes, we could go deep so much into this game, like big corporations into it. But yeah, we could slide to the next slide because our party audience got a lot of urgent questions for this. So so I want to ask, so what are your suggestions to further your research on this topic?
Yeah, so as I said in my presentation, next steps that I would like to take this, or it might not even necessarily have to be me, but gender definitely needs to be looked at, the differences in gender, because women do experience incarceration too, and they have criminal records as well, and they're the fastest growing population that is being incarcerated. So I think it's really important, to also factor in gender, because more often than not, males are the ones that are given the most attention. And also, different industries, job industries need to be looked at, because I was just looking at business type jobs, business related jobs. But business related jobs can differ from, let's say, the healthcare industry, where there is occupational licensing and things like that. And that all comes into play. Same thing with, trying to practice law, or, even in tech. Tech is the next big, well, it's already the big thing, right? So what's going on there? And I looked at pretty much the business industry because it has less laws regulating that that part of like the job industries. But I would like to look at others. And also what was my other one? I know I had 3. I forgot the other one, but like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be me right now in grad school. Like I have to figure out like what I'm gonna do. And right now I'm thinking I already did a lot from the experiences of the formerly incarcerated with degrees. And now I'm thinking like I want to kind of get to know what employers themselves are thinking, and how they are, treating individuals that come to them that have a record and a degree, and what they're thinking in terms of, these types of applicants. But we'll see.
Wow, that was amazing, especially the one you did mention about like the idea of the tech industry when it's coming in, because I know lately we are stepping into a new liberal market where big tech industries are start exploding like low wage workers. But yeah, we can move into the audience. I know they got urgent questions they want to start bringing up. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having the Q&A with both of y'all. So both of y'all went through amazing growth, especially from the university. Well, actually from being locked up to the university, then doing grad school. That's amazing work, homie. Top down. But yeah, take it away, Alexandria.
All right, we have a couple questions for our panelists. I think Flacco came in first. Flacco, would you like to ask your question?
Oh yeah, hey, check it out, Mike. Really loved your whole entire presentation. Your research is really rad. I was wondering, did you put in applications to the universities, like for like professor positions, like director positions of EOP or vice chancellor positions, like, because as I see it, like they give us these degrees, but I don't see many formerly incarcerated vice chancellors. I don't even see, even at the community college level, they just got this grant, for formerly incarcerated students, student programs. And I don't even see many directors that are directing those programs. It's mostly, folks. So I was kind of curious, like, did you like really attack the universities, because they give us these degrees, but they won't even hire us afterwards. You know what I'm saying? And it's a contradiction of everything. And so that was just my question to you, because unfortunately, we can get these degrees, they put us in all this student debt, but they won't even employ us afterwards. Like, and it's not right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, great question. So we picked the employers randomly. So we didn't target, specific like companies or jobs. But I do remember we did apply to some positions that had to do with some universities in California. I don't remember in particular like what the job position itself was, because it's been kind of a while now. But if I did some digging, I could see exactly what we applied to. And whether or not we got the call back on those particular job applications, I can't tell you right now because I don't remember. I would have to look at the raw data that I have. But yeah, like, that's exactly why, this type of research is important, right? Because like I said, there's an increasing number of formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated people going into higher ed. They're being encouraged to pursue higher ed, get these degrees. But for me, it's like, why are we telling people to do that and get in massive amounts of debt, invest all this time, and yet in the end, you might not even be able to get a job, especially in the particular field that you're interested in. And then at that point, you're just stuck with the shit ton of debt, or you're kind of forced to settle for jobs that pay less and have not so wanted working conditions. But then that goes back to like Gilbert's point of like, companies are learning how to exploit workers on a higher level now. So maybe we might get hired, but at a much lower rate, because they might hold this against us and say, well, you have a record, I'm giving you a chance. And because of that, they're going to pay us considerably less than someone that doesn't have, like it can go so deep. But that's why it's important for us to do research like this, because as more people get these degrees that have a record, we could present this information and say like, look, we're struggling to get jobs. You're telling us to go to school and we're doing it. So you guys need to do something about the market where we're actually given an opportunity to get into these higher wage, better working condition jobs. I've done this research. Other colleagues at Berkeley have looked specifically at university hiring. So that, there's already stuff out there with that you can look into. And then with Danny's research and, like, I feel like we're all making a movement towards, creating a more positive impact for everybody. So, we just got to keep doing this kind of work and presenting it in to the right people, you know what I mean? And just keep pushing, and make changes happen.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Flacco, for your question. Carlin did say he had the same question as Flacco, so it looks like Danny also has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So I do have a question, and it was a question for Michael, but I wanted to also touch on what he was saying about, these employment barriers, right? One of the things that I always try to tell people is like, as you're navigating higher education, start figuring out what you can get into in terms of your conviction history, because you're going to pose certain barriers for specific convictions. different licenses exist for different convictions, right? And so being mindful of that, right? But and then also, you know, I tell people like start making connections while you're undergrad, start making connections with potential employers while you're undergrad, just to kind of like get your name out there. But at the same time though, I feel like why do people have to go out of their way to do all this? Like it's like we have to go out of the way above and beyond to like continue to prove like no, look, I am worthy. I mean, like one of the things I realized early on, like I'm gonna have housing barriers. So I have an actual housing resume along with the work resume. I have a housing resume of all the people that rented to me and spaces I lived in as references for future potential housing because I have ran into those barriers of like, oh no, we got a conviction. Well, look, man, call these people and they'll talk to you about me and they'll tell you how I am. And one of the things they all unanimously say, like, man, this guy's a clean freak, right? But and that's a lot of people that have been in prison know, you know, how that is, right? But anyways, the question was to Michael, um, now that you're in grad school, I know you mentioned that you were undergrad, you were doing research, right? In I guess one of the undergrad research programs at UC Berkeley. Now that you're at grad school, do you feel that UC Berkeley as a research institution prepared you for the next transition into a PhD? Because I'm having that same experience now, and looking back, like I feel like whoa, UC Berkeley over prepared me for where I'm at right now, right? In terms of like the research and the you know, a lot of folks are coming into the program like barely being exposed to critical pedagogy and Paulo Freire, like yo, we were reading that in Chicano 50, you know? And so I don't know if that was your experience.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you point that out because I could agree to that Berkeley over prepared me, you know, for where I'm at now. But I will say that it definitely didn't prepare me for deeper statistical analysis. I'm not good with numbers. I'm not good with math in general. So now I'm expected to learn how to be damn near an expert on statistical analysis. So we have to really undergo that training. And that's been hard because, you know, at Berkeley, you're just given like a intro course for one semester, or you do it at community college, which I did, which was what, 5 years ago or 4 years ago now. So, you know, it wasn't really fresh. It's not fresh in my mind. So right now that part of my graduate school experience is tough, but my other classes that just deal with theory and writing and reading and stuff, Berkeley definitely over prepared me because I'm chilling, to be honest. Like, yeah. So it's, you know, yeah, Berkeley really a lot of traumas created there.
Thank you.
That's great. Berkeley is not alone. I can tell you right now, UCSB is doing the same thing to us underground scholars there. I'm getting some reactions from my fellow members, my fellow Santa Barbara members. So they're backing me up on that. Thanks so much to Danny and Michael both. That was not only fascinating research and it really opened our eyes, but also for giving us, you know, your personal stories and the insight to the process and kind of a look into what that process is like when you're going through the research and being honest with us about your struggles. Like when Michael said, it's just so much stuff to do. And you're like, it's just hard to make yourself do it. And I'm like, yes, that's college in a nutshell, right? Well, I'm glad to know research is no different. Before we wrap up here, I do just have one last ask for everyone that's here today. I know we have a lot of academics here, and we have, you know, researchers, students, but you're all just people and you all took in this incredible amount of information. But after hearing all of this research, you might be wondering what the average person can do to influence policy, supporting incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students. We've created a toolkit, which some of my colleagues will be dropping in the chat right now, but we created this toolkit. It's our link tree, and it will guide you in advocating for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated students. It's being shared in the chat right now, and it pretty much outlines a bill that was just introduced yesterday by Senator Hueso from San Diego, and it's Senate Bill 416. The legislation would protect incarcerated students' access to quality higher education. And we know that higher education in prison reduces recidivism and aids individuals in transitioning from incarceration to reentry as a resident, and increases odds of finding employment, which clearly we know the odds are already stacked against them. So SB 416 implements 2 safeguards that ensure that incarcerated students can obtain quality college education. First, this bill will clarify that nonprofit, regionally accredited institutions are qualified to provide higher education in California prisons. And second, SB 416 would amend Title 15 of the Penal Code to recognize the full-time college enrollment of an incarcerated student as full-time work or training, and because it's currently not. So, like these are things that we don't always recognize until it's a problem that we're up against. So essentially what we're asking you to do is, I'll share the link here in just a moment, but we're asking you to take the information that we have in our toolkit here, and we want you to share it with, friends, family, whoever it is that you run into. You can click on our link tree here and it will show you all of the research that you heard about today. We have linked to additional research that Danny's done, and we have links to both Danny and Michael's research that they presented on today. And then you'll see a press release for SB 416. And you'll also see a link there to find how you can contact your state senator. So if you could, call them up, it's quite simple, dial the number and you just tell them who your senator is. They'll connect you to their office. You can leave them a message and ask them to protect incarcerated students' access to higher quality education by supporting SB 416. This bill was just introduced. And so if we can start off strong with a lot of support, it'll help to send a message that this is important to us and that it matters. So if you could, take a little action and help us with that. All of that information is in our link tree. I'll share it one more time in the chat. And we also have a post-event survey. We'd like to, get your email if we could, or collect your email to be able to keep in touch with you and get a little bit of information about who it is that attended our event. But if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and if we can answer them, we will. But other than that, we don't want to take any more of your Friday evening. So once again, thank you so much to both of our presenters. We appreciate you, Danny and Michael, for all of your time and effort in coming to share your information with us. So thank you, everyone. Please copy that link and save it. You can send it around, ask people to call their state senator. That's always fun. We get to talk to another person. In quarantine, it can be quite a struggle. But thank you all so much for coming. And we appreciate you. We'll see you all next time, okay?
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right,
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
bye.
All right, everyone, take care.